Straight through the anthill. Lovely. We'll be bringing those home with us.
Excellent. Who doesn't need more ants in the van?
Yeah. Hey everyone, Chris here. Welcome back. Now we are starting a new project here. We're kind of in between major projects, and I'm doing some design work on a new scratch build that's going to be coming soon. But until that's ready, we're going to do a quick refinish project. Now we've got a Freewing T-33, and so this is a really nice 80mm EDF model. And actually this project started like 5 or 6 years ago. And so my friend Hex Speed, when these first came out, he's like, dude, you got to get one, they fly great. And so I picked one up, and it kind of sat in the box since then. And so he was in town for a work trip and was looking for something to do. And he's like, hey, you got a project or something? I was like, yeah, well, I got this T-33. And so he ended up taking that and doing a bunch of work on it, a lot of the refinish work. And in the process, we ended up doing some scale modification. And that included closing up the exhaust, making it look a lot more scale, adding speed brakes underneath. And also we had swapped out some of the landing gear to make them look a lot more scale. In all of that, he had done a lot of the refinish work on the wings and the fuselage. And so back in the box it went, and here we are 5+ years later, and it's finally, we're gonna get this done. And so there's still some refinish work to do, and then we're gonna do some detail work. We're gonna cockpit, detail parts. We're gonna really dress this model up and really make it look nice, because I've got a really special and unique paint scheme that we're gonna paint it in. But anyways, let's get into it. We'll start with the refinish work and we'll go from there. And then at the end, we'll try and see if we can get a flight on the airplane. And so yeah, let's get to it. All right, so this is the nose gear that's in it. I bought this, which is the Freewing Eurofighter strut, which is much more scale looking, especially for T-33. And so I am curious, because it's actually a little long, it's gonna be a little too long, so I'm curious if we can Frankenstein this lower fork assembly into this. I think we can. So let's give that a shot. All right, so here is the T-33 all-in primer. At this point, it is ready to fly and it is ready to paint as well. Now, this is a foam refinish project, and this is all stuff I have shown before, but just briefly, the process is, if you really want to create a smooth surface, make this look like, it's a true sheet metal or even just like a fiberglass model. And so I use Sherwin-Williams shrink-free spackle to do that. You just apply it down, and then once it's dry, sand it smooth. And then from there, you seal up the entire airframe with Minwax polyacrylic, and that's a water-based polyurethane. And what that does is it seals all of that spackle, for one, because that has porosity to it. And two, it actually creates a little bit of stiffness to the airframe. And so the combination of the two, it really does help make these models fly quite nicely because they're more rigid. From there, once you've done all of that, it's all about primer, sand, and depending on how many coats you go in that process, sanding in between coats, mind you, that is extremely important. You can get an extremely smooth finish on here. And so, you primer, you sand it down, primer again, sand it down. And so when I started all of this, the fuselage and the wings had been mostly completed by my friend Hex Speed. And so we had to take care of the tails, went through that whole process. And then from there went on to adding the scale details and all of that. Now, when this all started 5+ years ago, we did reduce the exhaust down. There was a 3D printed ring that went back there, and we closed that down and sanded a bunch of that away because it's just too fat for scale back there. And then the other thing that was done is my friend added speed brakes. And so that's basically a balsa wood tray that he built. And so to create the speed brakes themselves, those are made out of balsa wood. And so he formed them, fiberglass them to match the contour of the bottom of the airplane. And so there's just a single servo in there, and they are hinged with a single piano hinge. And so that servo is pushing basically 2 push rods to open and close those speed brakes. And so it's a really cool modification. It's absolutely scale, and it should help on the landings in terms of dragging the airframe up and having to carry some additional power in the approach. So the other thing was that we had done is we replaced all of the main gear. Those come out of the box as trailing link landing gear, and so which obviously aren't scale. So we took the Freewing ME262 mains and basically just dropped them in retracts and struts all together. We shortened the springs a little bit so they have a little bit softer compression, and that was pretty much it. The tires look better, the struts are straight, they're not trailing link. I will say that the aluminum on those is pretty soft, but they're cheap enough and easy enough to replace. But I may end up just making my own at some point just because so that way I won't have to worry about that in the future, and I can do that through PCBWay. But anyways, the other thing is that the nose gear, this is the new version 2 Freewing Eurofighter nose strut, and it is actually a pretty close representation to scale for the airplane, and actually it is slightly longer than the stock strut, and so that means it also has a better attitude on the ground, a slightly nose up attitude, which should help additionally with rotation. But I want to mention that that is set up for a larger wire than is in the model, the retract that is in the model. And so I just used a brass tube that fit perfectly inside the strut and perfectly over the metal pin on the retract. And so I just CA'd that in place and drilled through and tapped it so that way I could get the set screws in there. And that's how I dealt with the mismatch in the wire diameter. The other thing is, because we replaced the main struts and retracts, the tab that's in the inner gear door that the wheel touches when to close the door when it retracts, well, that has to be elongated so that the tire sits and pulls that up fully because of the different strut. So again, if this is mods you're thinking of doing, you just gotta keep that in mind and understand that there's additional modification required to make all of the doors close up perfectly. Didn't really have to deal with that on the nose, which was great. And so once all of the refinish work was done, like on the tails, the fuselage and wing was done, I also completely redid the cockpit. There are a number of detail parts, including the cockpit, available for 3D printing on Colts 3D. And so there are a whole assortment of files available on Colts 3D for this T-33, and that includes the cockpit. It includes these scale vents here, as well as the gun ports in the nose. And so I had 3D printed all of those on my resin printer, so super high detail, and so went through and completely redid the cockpit. And so the result here is absolutely fantastic because I replaced all of the foam parts. The only thing that's the same is the tub, and then from there it's my Saberjock pilots that I scaled to the airframe as well. And when you look at the T-33 and you look pictures with the pilot in there, the pilots really fill up quite a bit of the cockpit, and so I wanted to make sure that these filled up the cockpit in the same way. And these are about 1/10 scale if you're looking to replace the pilots in yours. So I ended up painting all of that with enamel paints because I really like how they go down, and they're really robust, but added a little dry brushing to give it some weathered look. And so it was just painted real straightforward, did some dry brushing to kind of help bring out some of the details and stuff, but that was mostly about it. That was done there, and I had to go with, you know, one of these pilots had to have the gold helmet in there because that's just classic. And so anyways, my nose itches. And so once I had that all done, you know, we put the canopy back on and sealed it up forever. And then I went through and added the additional detail parts. And so one of the things in the process of all this is we closed up the cheater inlet that's on the underside and opened up the actual inlets in the model as much as we physically could to allow as much air in as we could get. Because of that and the limited amount of area that you do get doing that, these scale vents in the fuselage here are actually functional, that they are open into the inlet system. And so those are gonna pull in a little additional air. Granted, maybe not a whole lot, but something's better than nothing. And so yeah, we'll see how that all works out when it flies. It has flown in this configuration before by my friend on his own personal airplane. And so we know it shouldn't be an issue, but otherwise, you know, you notice there's no seam lines or anything like that on here. I mean, this is a true one-piece airplane. The wing is on permanently, the tails are on permanently because I wanted to get this all as clean as I possibly could. Hopefully we don't have any fan issues. If we do, then I'll have to deal with that when the time comes, but that's all been sealed up, and generally speaking, these are pretty well vetted, so I shouldn't, and so I don't anticipate any issues. And again, if it is what it is, it's a choice that I made, and so, you know, we'll deal with it if we have to. And so otherwise, this is ready to fly at the moment. I've got a 10-channel receiver in here. I'm using 9 out of the 10 because I pulled the stock blue box that they have in there that does all their auto mixing in there. I pulled all of that out to create more space and then have everything just directly plugged into the receiver itself. And so what that means is I have full control. I've got independent control on ailerons if I want it, and I also have independent control on elevators if I need it. And I did kind of need that because I needed to match the surfaces a little bit better than they were out of the box. And so having that independence allowed me to match them exactly. So I think that about covers it. Let's take this out to the field. We're gonna fly this thing. It's not flown yet, and so we'll see how it does. It's really gonna be interesting with, you know, the closed up aux air inlet and just pulling air from the inlets themselves. You know, the model's really come together. I've got a really awesome navy paint scheme that we're gonna paint on this when the time comes. But otherwise, let's head out to the field and see how she does. Now, before we head out to the field, I want to let you know that this video is brought to you by PCBWay. If you have any kind of maker needs, if you've got a design that you need manufactured in some way, they can help you out. They can do pretty much anything, 3D printing, machining, electronics assembly, like they can do it all. And so it really opens up all kinds of possibilities to design and fabricate something that otherwise you may not be able to. And so yeah, be sure to check them out. I've got a link down in the description, and a big thank you to them for their support. All right, maiden time. Figure we'll do this in primer in light of recent events. Rotate it around. Now the back. Vertical. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're good. Got this. This is the Eurofighter nose strut on here. It looks pretty good. More scale. Cool.
Ooh, what you got there?
Speed brakes.
Ooh.
Nice. So that should be fun. All right, everything looks good.
Did you have any frame drops?
Nope. No. Yeah, flaps are good. All right, let's make sure she's gonna taxi straight and then we'll give it a shot. Yep. Straight as an arrow.
Nice.
Can you hear the the intonation of the fan?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
because there's no cheater under here, and we opened up the inlets, so it's completely clean in here. But that means at low speed, the fan's not super happy. Once it gets up to speed though, you should hear a tonal difference on the fan. All right, here we go. All right, taking off. Full throttle here. And low rate everything. Still need to tone down the aileron. Let's see. Gets a little hard to see up there. The fog's pretty low. Let me see what the birdage like. It's a little more solid. So I'm gonna drop the gear and set up a landing. Get Definitely gets in a pocket with the flaps. Gets a little tail high. Yeah, I'll take that. We're gonna go off the runway, but that's all right. I should have brought the speed brakes up. I didn't think about it. All right, well, not my finest flying, but I'll take it. The landings need work, but yeah, I think it's time to start painting the airplane. What's interesting is you can hear the tonal difference on the fan with that fully closed duct. I think with a little less humid air, it would probably do a little bit better. Like the first flight, you could hear that it never really fully came on, or like the fan was never fully happy until I powered back and then powered back up. This second flight was better. Also, the CG was a little bit further forward on the second flight, which was better. It felt generally better, but I still got some tuning to do, which is fine. I gotta check out my landing gear. I gotta figure out how to slow it down, but that's all gonna happen in time, so I'll sort that all out. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's time to paint the airplane. We'll paint it up, detail it up, get it looking all nice, and yeah, we'll go from there. And so yeah, if you want to see the last build series, you can see that here. That was kind of an unfortunate ending to a really awesome airplane, but there's a lot that we covered there, and we are going to come back to that one again in future. But otherwise, guys, be on the lookout for the next video. We're going to do painting, panel lines, weathering, all of that, and so I'm excited to get this done. So until next time, I'll see you at the field.